very happy to be here with you today to share this presentation with you. As we have been introduced, I'm just waiting for our slides to be there. Anyway, what my colleague, Associate Professor Zeinab, Younis, and me will talk about, it is about sustainability and sustainability education and using information technology. So what Professor Roushdy, to those of you who have been with us since the start, has talked about was the smart city in Cairo. It was on the macro level and about cities and how they are functioning and how ICT is being used in order to make life different, make life more sustainable, make life more for the future. What we want to focus on in our presentation is an aspect of this. First, we will go to Africa in general, because this day is about Africa. So we will touch upon the scene in Africa. And then we will go bit by bit towards Egypt. And within Egypt, we want to focus more on higher education in Egypt and how higher education in Egypt has been using ICT for in order to reach sustainable development in a better way, and also in order to learn more about sustainable development, because this fits within the UN 17 SDGs, and it fits within all the strategies, the global strategies, and also the national strategies of individual countries, and one of them is Egypt. It fits also within the national strategies of Africa, because Africa as a continent has also adopted the 17 SDGs, and Africa as a whole is moving towards the 17 SDGs in all areas as much as possible. So I will leave the floor now to my colleague, Associate Professor Zeinab Younis, who will start with our presentation.
Good morning. I think I will use that one. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, hosted by the University of Economics in Katowice. It's a great pleasure and honor, myself and Professor Hadia, to represent our university, the British University in Egypt, the Faculty of Economics, Business Administration, Economics, and Political Science. We will start generally by providing you a bit of a general overview of Africa's challenging regarding sustainability at the beginning. Then Professor Hadia will continue. We will have an interactive presentation. I mean, bits and pieces of different topics of your interest. So if we're going to start generally as a general overview, I want you to agree or disagree with me on this definition, and I would like your collaboration, the students on the floor. If we are saying that sustainability is the concept of meeting your needs without compromising the ability for future generations to meet their own needs, would you agree or disagree on that statement? You agree? Who agrees? Put up your hands. Okay, the majority. So there are some who don't agree. Are you all familiar with sustainability as a terminology, sustainable development? Yes, for sure. Meeting our own needs without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs as well. Yeah?
Yes. So the majority agreed, but who didn't agree? There are some who didn't agree. What are your views on that? Can you share it with us, please? One of the attendees who didn't agree. Who didn't agree on the statement?
Are you sure that we can meet our own needs in 2022 without compromising future generation needs? Are we on the right track or not? Yeah. Okay, sure.
It's not necessarily, my opinion, but anyway. So I think it's very problematic to say that we can really achieve these objectives without targets that people have, do I really need it?
Yeah.
Do I? Oh, okay. Oh, so I need to speak not that loudly, I guess, and then it's going to be just better or fine. So if I really understand the statement, then trying to reflect on that, I think it will be very difficult to achieve the needs of a sustainable development. First of all, by keeping more or less the same level of consumption needs of people that people have, and I don't think we can really blame them because it's very pumped through media, for example. And also, I'm not sure we can achieve these goals considering the big energy crisis that we are in. Because obviously, I can imagine that for a given household, for a given person even, even very, very, let's say, eco-oriented person, if this person has nowadays a choice, either to have the house preheated, like kind of warm house, or to keep this sustainable development goals in mind, then I can see there's going to be a very difficult choice. Considering this might be people there in the family, even children, and so on. So I mean, for example, preheating with coal, and this kind of stuff. Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Just for the sake of discussion.
Yeah, okay. Thank you
you.
very much for starting with that. So what we are here for is to enlighten you and highlight some of the challenges, because what you are referring to are challenges, actually, to what meets with the economic development and societies of good practices from Africa. So if we are saying that the environment is usually stated as the silent bearer of conflict. So what pays the price? The environment. So the environment would reflect in food insecurities, green insecurities, environmental crisis. And the UNFCCC agreement pact back in COP21 in Paris in December 2015, which was later on tried to be implemented starting with Glasgow 2016, had highlighted African directions in order to sustain development. There is the African Renewable Energy Initiative, and there is the African Adaptation Initiative. All the initiatives of the UN, all the initiatives by different countries, the most important thing is the alignment of people to that initiatives. Because as we stated before, you are going to help to think green and not to think gray, like what I stated before. So, the poor quality of human thinking is a challenge, because this is actually what your colleague was just stating now. If you've given the choice between two kinds of heating system or whatever, what you're going to choose. So if we're talking about Africa in general, we have a general overview about Africa. Over 300 million Africans do not have access to clean water. Desertification, climate change is a problem. 48 countries with 700 million population, less than $1 a day income in some regions. How to link governance to wealth in Africa? This is an issue. How to link governance to economic growth? How to link the environment to development is one of the biggest challenges. The lack of effective institutional capacity to manage the resources in a substantial way is a challenge. The economic and investment policies in some parts in Africa is a challenge. Some countries do not even recognize the policy of governance or integrating knowledge capacity inside the administrative systems in some countries in Africa. The problem of water supplies. So, the situation in Africa highlighted by several researchers, you could find a lack of voluntarily national review. Only 19 African countries are not reporting and compromise on comparability. So the idea of sustainability reporting is that you have to report good and bad practices in order to provide a comparative analysis and a benchmark in measuring the achievement of sustainable development and the sustainable development goals. You would also find things related to some of the SDGs, like for example, in number 10, reduced inequality, Number 11, sustain city and urban development. Number 12, in responsible communities. You could find that these are challenges that face some African nations that are not able to adopt policies in order to run those specifically 3 sustainable development goals. So how is it embracing the goals? You would find a deficiency in this part. There is a challenge in the global sustainable development goals frameworks because it hangs on some international political levels, but has not cascaded to national implementations in some African countries. There are not enough data for tracking, and information and data are superpowers when you want to speak about sustainability and sustainable development. Also, financing sustainable development goals. In order to achieve, you need financial measures in order to achieve the goals for sustainable development. So some African nations were adopting the notion what to do. Is it enough to go to national development banks? But they will also face the problem of financing and governance. And therefore, that's a challenge and that's a problem. The problem also, and I leave the floor to Professor Hadia, will be in SDG number 4, which is the quality of education and the focus on education.
Of course, the focus on education, which is the SDG number 4, this was very much brought into the light with the pandemic. And it is, yes, an aim, and Africa, as a mostly developing countries, of course, are in Africa. The focus on education is another challenge, another big challenge. And education is actually the base for everything. If we really want to achieve development, health and education are so important. And this gives the tools to people, to young people like you and to children to move forwards. And this road is not so easy, and there needs to be more and more professional programs to enhance this and to support the road to proper education. Also, the culture of academics and teachers within Africa, they have to also be taken into consideration, and proper training has to be given to all of them. Unfortunately, and this is from research, during the pandemic, Africa, yes, some universities did very well, and some schools did very well, and some countries did well, but we cannot generalize at all, because the research brings to us the figures that 22% of students in African universities indicated actually the absence of online or remote learning solutions at a time when this was needed during the pandemic to continue learning. So this is something that all universities have to deal with. The same happens with schools. If we take a general view, many of the schools around Africa in many countries were not able to continue their education during the pandemic. I know this is very unfamiliar to you because probably here you didn't have this problem, but in Africa in general, this problem was there. In Egypt in general, not everybody was 100% fortunate enough to be able to work well during the pandemic. We'll shed more light on universities, on higher education, because this is the focus on our discussion. We have very good successful stories. We have these universities in front of you. We have many universities in South Africa that managed well. We have universities in Tunisia that managed well, in Morocco, in Egypt, and we have also in Kenya. So we do have very good stories and success stories, but some of them did not really do well. And the challenges, many of the challenges that were faced by African universities and schools was the lack of infrastructure, was the lack of trainings to students. They were not able, not all of them were trained to use the technology, and even the teachers and instructors. So these three main players in the system were not fully there. So there are many models that need to be adopted and can be adopted and were adopted by Western countries, and this has to be taken into account and studied, because we in Africa, we have to move forward and we have to be ready, not just for another pandemic. The pandemic has shed the light. We have seen the problems, but we need to move forward. And by moving forward, there are several models that Dr. Zeinab will introduce to you that actually should be adopted by universities and schools in order to reach more sustainable solutions using technology.
Okay, we have various business models to manage sustainability challenges as well. And the famous researcher, the management guru, Peter Drucker, stated in the purpose-driven model that performance that matter, and he was very clear that good intentions are not always good enough. And therefore, great statements are not either. This is rather a pessimistic view, actually, for managerial creation of values. But in reality, it happens because we have a very famous model leading to purpose-driven leadership model based on sustainable business strategy. It helps businesses to grow and facing some of the world's biggest challenges, how an individual can make a difference in this context is the true meaning for leadership. And addressing environmental and social risks, capitalizing on commercial opportunities, is aligning with this model, because you set the purpose and you set the strategy matching this purpose, and at the end you have the end result. In the middle you have the input, the process, and the output. You can work with the process. You can move the process from one stage to the other until you reach the final result. And this is actually was the basis and a complementation for the ESG models. This is very important because we address our clients in the nation as stakeholders. If you are a stakeholder in the university, you're going to keep and protect the environment of your place you're working in. If you are a stakeholder in your country and you know that the taxes you pay are going in the correct channels, you're going to keep your country and face the challenges with your country. And therefore, the environmental, social, and governance model create long-term and competitive advantage as well, balancing business needs with environmental-related issues and societal factors. The ESG model has been actually highly adopted in Canada, and in different businesses, endeavors in Canada, looking for transparency and accountability in different companies. Even lenders and investors as well would be asking about ESG activities in the company before starting a contract or a deal. Also, the idea of inclusivity. Inclusivity is an SDG, which is highly respected and implemented in Canada. If you do not include specific members in your company, immigrants, whatever, you are going to be questionable and accountable for these actions afterwards. Also, managing water pollution and water usages, equity, compliance, and business ethics are great values that are embedded into some of the Canadian companies. There are fines that if you do not respect, and this is actually a good common practice because the idea of the carrot and the stick, if you do not accept the policy of the government, you get punished by paying a fine, a very high fine from the company. And therefore, you will by time, learn to adopt a strategy that is environmental friendly. The other models that look for the idea of keeping sustainable challenges is a common model in management that has been used recently in order to sustain some of the goals in different endeavors and in different countries. The agile model, when you anticipate the change and you are proactive for the change and generate confidence in the process within a certain manufacturing, for example, process into a certain company, and you have to convince your employees that they have to respect the environment, liberate thinking and critical preservations from old myths, and work on evaluating results that are pro the environment. So you set the agenda, you set the strategy, in two ways, either operational on the level of the process or in a great kind of portfolio agility, where you have to diversify your investments into different areas in the company. One of the highly recognizable areas nowadays in several companies in several African nations, is investing in the environment. And the idea of green finance and the green finance initiative by some countries. There's also a couple of other models. The LEAPS model, but I would keep this until we reach the idea later on for some other discussion. And I would take this VUCA model because of the time. If you want to achieve agility in trespassing a strategy from one point to the other, be the VUCA exponential mind. Because if you think outside the box, the term itself would characterize as difficult situation, critical thinking patterns. So always, by any situation, and you guys will encounter this even in your life afterwards, you have the volatility, you have the ability to change rapidly and quickly to disruptions. Your company has to be equipped, so is your country. Then you have to know how to meet uncertainty. And you have to be able to face the risk and fight the doubts to facilitate the pace of change. Also, there is another letter related to the complexity. So you have to be able to employ critical thinking to solve problems. Usually when countries are faced by challenges, we go to the rational model of thinking, but most African countries go to the bounded rationality idea. Why? Because they have to satisfy the best possible solution out of the resources in hand. And therefore, the resources are not always redundant. And therefore, we have to capitalize on what we have in order to reach a certain degree of achievement. Then the last one is the ambiguity. And the ambiguity is the ability to overcome doubts by looking to the outcome of the iceberg. I'll give you a very interesting example. Anybody remembers the boat Titanic? Okay, what was above the ocean in the iceberg? Just the tip of the iceberg. What would you expect underneath? The rest of the iceberg. What caused Titanic to sink? Was it the tip of the iceberg or the bottom? Because the captain calculated his directions to the tip of the iceberg. That's basically what happens with all African nations as challenge. Most problems are embedded down and inside and underneath the ocean. You don't see it. You just see the tip of the problem. Okay? And when you see the tip of the problem, your solutions are on a bounded rationality level, satisfying the best possible solution on a short-term basis. If you want to think on a long-term basis, what you were going to do, you were going to dig deeper and deeper and go inside several of these challenges. Like so many myths around, when you say that we go for a red ocean strategy, for example, in management. We look to the turbulent environment and we try to innovate and be competitive in. But on the other hand, if we go to a blue ocean strategy, what we're going to do? We're going to go into calm water and then wait for the storm to happen. We're going to be always ready and proactive for the storm to happen. Okay? So, another thing related to ambiguity will be the adversity quotient. Okay, lots of our, and this is going to be a very interesting point for you. Lots of our teachers are always telling us about the emotional intelligence and the good IQ. And then if you put good IQ with good emotional intelligence as a student or as a leader, you will get what we call the EQ. Okay, but what about the AQ, the adversity quotient? The adversity quotient is based on your ability to go through a tough path in life, like the pandemic, for example, and come out of it without losing your mind. What does this depend on? This depends on the critical thinking, and this depends on your good employability of the VUCA model, how you use this VUCA model in order to reach good, sustained result. Because I can have a plan on a short-term basis, and then the plan will fail in the next month. Why? Because I did not measure and I did not create a good possible plan for that. What sustains these models are not only theory, but good practices. You can have the models on the book, but the good practices will sustain it. And the good practices are what Professor Hadia will tell us about now, related to the ICTs. How will it be used to achieve and support sustainability in Africa?
Okay, so now you have all the information about the tools and why there needs to be inclusion and why we need to be all the buzzword that Dr. Zeinab said at the beginning, stakeholders in this. And I'm not sure if you all studied sustainable development at a point during your studies, but one of the important theories in sustainable development is the stakeholders theory. Stakeholders theory, in very, very simple words, as you can guess from its name, it is about that we all need to be stakeholders in this. And actually we are. It's not that we pretend that we are. We are all stakeholders. And when we all understand this, and when we all appreciate this and act upon this, then we can all take part through all of these models. And what the pandemic did, actually, the pandemic had so many good sides of it, although it's tough, but it had good sides. So, for example, as I tried to explain to you before, it showed Africa that so many things are lacking there. But yes, it is a problem, but with it come opportunities. That it is good that we were able to identify the problems, and then through these models that Dr. Zeinab has explained, we can see the right way to Africa. Let's first see the challenges. As I said, the challenges were that not so many students were fortunate enough to be able to continue with their education. So we need to prepare students, and I said instructors as well, and we need the policies from the governments to support that and the funds to support that. Because without the funds, how can we have the proper infrastructure? And actually, another point that Dr. Zeinab has mentioned, which is being prepared as a student in the world, because what we are talking about also to be sustainable is employability, is to having this intelligence of being able to go through life. And fortunately enough, what the pandemic showed us is that ICT in itself, and using ICT, and this is what I'm going to explain to you in the coming presentation, really can help and support students on the short run and the long run to develop critical thinking, to learn more, to actually go over challenges, things that they didn't know they can do. ICT can support. ICT can make us understand and learn things we thought were difficult, like mathematics, like accounting. So many things ICT was able to provide us tool with. Let's go through them with respect to Africa. And as we said before, we are going to focus on Egypt a little bit because we come from Egypt, and on our university, the British University in Egypt. So what we know from the experience in Africa, that technology actually is very important, and it can support the development and achieve sustainability in many ways. And economic growth will come out of going through the sustainable development, and ICT can support this. In many areas, not just education, the development of new energy technologies is very important and is related to innovation and to ICT. The work of linking supply chain and logistics and avoiding the problems that we all faced after the pandemics, lots of it is also related to the proper use of ICT and being trained enough. And this was my question to Professor Roushdy before, because we need to be trained enough, everybody, all of us, to use the technology in the best way in order to achieve sustainability. And the pandemic taught us this as well. So we must be able to use the technology in the most effective way, whether it is in energy, whether it is in waste management, in all areas of life, in the smart cities, in all areas of life. In education, it was actually one of the things we succeeded in the British University in Egypt, to have so many things that were done online. as you see from the pictures we have, we conducted so many lectures, we conducted so many webinars, and we had our colleagues from all over the world attend with us, and this kept the students alive and kept them engaged and kept them into everything that was happening, which was very important and which showed that through the proper use of technology, this is all can be made possible and can be done to have proper education. We used digital platforms. I'm sure you did this here as well, learning management systems, and they helped us a lot. So we all learned together how to use Microsoft Teams and Zoom and all of these techniques to give our lectures, our tutorials, how to divide our students in groups when we are teaching so that they can gather together and do the assignments together and have group work and so on. But was everybody ready in Africa? No. As I said, some universities were equipped. We were lucky enough because we were using technology for 2 years before the pandemic started, but not all universities were like this. And it is time to have this available in all universities in Africa. So we are all stakeholders, we are all part of this, and all African players, whether it is the government, whether it is the individual, the groups, the private sector, the NGOs, we all need to take part of it together and to have all our educational entities ready for something like this in the future. In addition, it's not just to face pandemics again. It has proven, and research has shown us after the pandemic, that actually using ICT has helped a lot, and through many techniques, because so many things were done, and this was one of the outcomes of the research, because digital platforms that made it possible to use online programs to enhance the teaching and the learning process, even the assessment process. Artificial intelligence played a huge role, it's still playing. Coding, media creation, and all the above tools, they were actually leading, and research has proven that, to the amazement of everybody, that students developed more critical thinking and problem-solving skills due to that, because the challenge of using the technology and dealing with it and having individualized learning experiences helped to achieve that. In some cases, higher education was made more accessible, because students could go back home and study from their homes and didn't have to go and live in the dorms with the universities again. Also, adaptive learning and personalized instructions was made possible through the use of ICT in education, in hybrid teaching through the pandemic. The assessment and all the tools that were actually found to do proper assessment and to make sure that students are really being evaluated in the right way. And still there is lots of development in this area. Also, connecting students' work to the real world through simulation and sometimes also gamification made learning very interesting, made it possible, and opened for us tools that can be used, again, not only during pandemics, but also during the whole year when we have no threats and anything, because actually this gives students and instructors as well other tools to work with, and not just in education, other tools to work with later in life, in their work, in any challenge that they face, because they witness this and they can make the best use out of technology in order to achieve this. Again, looking at the British University in Egypt, we made the best use of it as we can. So we tried to work with books that used the interactive technology. We had our financial lab work remotely so that students could access the lab when they were at home, so a kind of a simulation. we actually tried to do more student-centered learning, as I said, through the breaking up of groups and so on, and we gave individual students blended learning activities that they can do within the class. And we use so many techniques and new techniques in order to encourage students to experience lots of materials in the best way possible. And it was proven that many of the material that we thought was not be able to be done online, actually it was done online, and it was done successfully. And even if when we went back, we decided to adopt the hybrid teaching, because we learned a lot out of the experience with ICT and the technology during the pandemic. So what we are taking from this is that based on our experiences, and there were many, as you see when we came back, we depended more and more on technology, and we had our classes which were partially online, partially on campus, and even during the classes we had, as you see, guests being with us during the class from all over the world, which enriched the experiences of students. So we want to know, we got out of this that actually we have a good experience that we can apply to Africa in future as well, because we can, through the things that we learned, support the sustainability in higher education in Africa. And this is based on our own experience and on research that was done during that time and after the pandemic. So that there are many techniques that can be used, adaptive learning, where we tailor towards the needs of each student, because they get back to us online, and then we can tailor for each student based on their own confusion, their own things that they are asking about. And then I can group them in certain groups in order for them to tailor for them specific activities and tasks. Then I can use persuasive design, where I design, as I said, again, for specific needs of specific groups of students. I can also use gamification, which is a very interesting technique, and I'm sure all of you and most of you use it, because it was found out that through gamification, students learn very difficult challenges, because it goes with you step by step, like playing any game, and then you get scores. And if you do something wrong, it gets back to you and tells you, no, 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 try again, bing, this was wrong. So you go and do it again. So research has shown, and we have tried this ourselves, you can learn complex equations through that. You can learn about accounting through that. You can learn about so many things through that. Even I read in the research that in medicine, we didn't use this because we don't have medicine in our university, but you can learn through that even things in medicine. Also the wearable technology, and the wearable technology is one of the things that was used a lot in medicine, because through that they can even do some surgeries using that, and then it is a game first, and then they can apply it in future. So based on that, and not just these things, it's very important to, again, stream all of this towards sustainability. Because how do we use actually technology in the general way to support sustainability? It's about achieving a change in behavior and then evaluating this change, both through the use of technology. How do I change behavior? As I just said, a problem, a mathematical problem or an accounting problem that the student didn't understand, and through the use of ICT, through gamification, for example, it's made in steps, and the student does it step by step, and the device gets back to you, no, go back the step again, this step was not accurate, you need to repeat this because you didn't do it in the proper format. So you learn by doing, you will get scores, and then you will feel, oh, I reached this score, I can go higher, I can go higher. So it can change behavior, and then I can evaluate the change. And how do we evaluate the change as an example of education? We can do this definitely through the assessments, because through assessment, I evaluate what was my behavior, what was my outcome, and now after the implementation and the use of the ICT. How is my new behavior, my new knowledge, my new skill, all of this under behavior, and what can I do to improve it? So, Dr. Zeinab, how do you also recommend that Africa can use the development in ICT?
So I would just return back to one of the actual strategies that we implemented in our British University in Egypt. We did actually, because I presented some models of management that would relate on how we can understand and implement different strategies for development as what pertains to Africa. But our British University in Egypt was a correct example for what we call a leapfrogging, when you jump from one state to the other, when you just aim for the high end reaching output results. Because when Professor Hadia introduced some of the things that we were doing this long before the pandemic. We were doing the student-centered learning, the blended learning, and the interactive platforms before the pandemic. And specifically in one of my classes, we used what we call the flex model, where the online learning was the backbone of student learning in some parts. And the actual blended learning experience was very successful because you present around 70% of the material of a blended learning topic ahead to the students. They can work it independently, and then they can come back the next week, research the concept, delivered by the teacher, opening the venues for critical discussions and critical thinking all over. So, and I actually published a paper on 2019, which is linking industry to academia, and it was the case of business school, and it was internationally published long before the pandemic. So we were actually using this concept of leapfrogging. Let's go back to the LEAP model that I was just telling you about. The LEAP model was just before the VUCA model, and I told you that LEAP model is used by agents of change for sustainable development to introduce a new idea along the context of sustainability. The policymakers have to learn how to listen, emphasize, ask, paraphrase, and summarize the concept. You give the benefits for using this new technology. You give the benefit of how this new technology will induce change. And therefore, you will be convinced to use it. Okay? So, when we align this with the leapfrogging idea, it's just here. So, what are the examples that some nations actually bypass traditional stages of development to jump directly to the latest technology? Like, for example, you can skip personal computers by using tablets. The process, new internet users are obtaining access through your mobile devices nowadays. So this is an actual leapfrogging. For example, as Professor Roushdy was stating, the smart village is an actual example of leapfrogging. Why? Because you build new residences some distances from an existing urban area, bypassing the vacant parcels located closer to the city. And in other words, the developers would choose to build on less expensive land further away or farther away from the urban area rather than on costly land closer to the city. So this was the example of the new capital. Also, the state economic development strategies, they are always directed to states, usually invests in 3 areas in order to encourage job and the wage growth and to encourage for the undermined people to be part and stakeholders of the society. They would invest in the marketplace, the workforce, and the community. And I want you to put on the community millions of lines, because by including the community in whatever endeavor you're doing, that's the actual challenge. Whether in education, and we do have communities, committees in different universities. In education, getting you to be linked to your community creates an added value to the whole society of students in universities, and later on to the whole country or the society as a whole. There are development challenges for education in Egypt, and I think that Professor Hadia will have an ample time reflecting on different SDGs related to education in Egypt challenges as well.
So going out of these details, in order to achieve all of this, we have faced some challenges in the area of education in general and higher education in particular in Egypt. And Dr. Zeinab and me, we believe that this applies to many African countries as well, so that you can have a view on the problems in Africa. So the infrastructure across the country, hardware and software, needs to be taken care of, because it doesn't reach all the places, all the villages, all the parts of Egypt in the desert and so on. So this is one challenge. Another challenge is the perception and the beliefs, and you know how culture plays a role. Because when people think about technology, what do you think they think about first? What is technology for people in general? IT, just IT. And when they think about technology, what comes to their mind? Sorry?
Smartphone.
The smartphone, exactly. And the second thing is the laptop. Anything else? No. Is this the role of technology? This is really summarized. So really...
She's from Egypt.
Ah, really? So this is really no, it is much broader than this. And so the culture and the beliefs and we need to be more acquainted with technology and all the aspects of technology. And in order to do this effectively, and this was also noticed during the pandemic, the curriculum has to fit, because it should not be just a curriculum that instead of teaching things on campus, I'm just saying the same thing, using the same way through the internet. Like this, it will be just distance learning. It shouldn't be like this. It should be all the things that I have mentioned, like gamification, like adaptive learning, like all the tools that make actually the graduate having more skills to the labor market. So it's not just so small and simple. The characteristics and abilities of learners have to be enhanced. They have to be really trained to use this in the most effective way, because it is not just a laptop and it is not just a way of communication back and forth and that's it. No, it's an array of tools that I am using to enhance skills and characteristics and abilities. And of course, the instructors. This is another challenge, because not all instructors will be equipped and will have the proper training and background to use everything, because again, it is not just that I am holding the mic and delivering my lecture or tutorial exactly as if I would do a lecture on campus. This will not be of much value. So there has to be strategies, policies on the institutional level, in universities, in schools, and of course, in the level of the government. There have to be the proper policies, the proper tools to support this, and the proper educational resources on all levels. So all of this is very important in order to achieve proper education, sustainability education, which is supported by ICT across the African continent.
Okay, excuse me. Maybe it is a panel, so maybe we have the opportunity to provide discussions. So if you could give us a chance to ask
yes,
questions.
we can stop at this point and leave the questions. No, yeah,
okay.
Definitely.
Great. So at this moment, I would like to ask for questions. First panelist, yes, please, Professor, if you have any questions.
I must say the amount of information given to us for Professor Younis and FakhrElDin has devastated me.
Devastated you? What?
Devastated. It was so many and so precise that I'm devastated. Nevertheless, I will try to ask a few questions. What other country, apart from Egypt, are potential leader in sustainability in Africa?
Okay, there are many countries that are. If I mention sustainability alone,
5.
yeah, we have Kenya. Kenya are doing excellent work. South Africa as well, doing excellent work. And Morocco to an extent.
Yeah.
And there is also one of the countries in the West which is doing very good work, because we are members of PRIME, and I meet my colleagues from African business schools in PRIME. I will check and get back to you about, I'm just not getting the name.
4 is also
okay.
enough. 4 is also enough. And the next question, you told a lot of pandemic, a lot of art in the pandemic changed education. And the question is, what live with us after the pandemic? Pandemic was, of course, a huge impulse for digitalization. What live with us for the next year?
What's after the pandemic?
In
Post-pandemic.
education, in education.
In education. We are going to follow what everybody is familiar with, which is the new normal. Nothing is normal anymore. And in order to take a path of the new normal, we have to learn to be proactive all the time. You're not the prey anymore. You're going to be the hunter who goes after the prey. And in order to do this, you have to be fortified with policies from your institutions, government regulations and policies in order to implement the highest level of ICTs everywhere, because you don't know what tomorrow carries. Maybe another pandemic and you're staying at home again. So how we're going to learn, how these lovely students here, the future generation, are going to be able to grasp the material that they need for their classes. This is on the level of education. So,
because I'm afraid, I'm skeptical, because I'm meaning that e-learning can be only a supplement.
E-learning.
E-learning.
Of course, face-to-face communication.
Can be only a supplement, not a substitute. I personally, I need contact with public.
You need students.
Yes.
I need students. I need
and you are
biological.
Right. Yes, yes. And students also
living
need the
students.
teacher. And students also need the teacher. They need the instructor. And actually, this has come after the pandemic, when we adopted hybrid teaching. The students came to us, I'm talking now from my hat as Vice Dean for Teaching and Learning, and they said, we want to go on campus. We want everyday classes. They wanted 100% on campus.
Face-to-face.
But what we are trying to do now is to have a mix. Last year, we did it 50-50. Also, students didn't like it at all. So now we have only one day, which is online. This is just to have to have students not forget how we were used to do that, and in order to equip them with the tools, and in order to keep what I just said, that the students, all the students know the tools and actually develop the critical skills that are part of the ICT and using technology, and the teachers also, that they are prepared for that. But in reality, it is a supplement. ICT will always be a supplement, but a good supplement at times. And I think the pandemic has shown us...
But only a supplement.
Yes, a supplement.
Because I have a son also, he's a student. We was together at home in the moment of COVID isolation.
Yes.
And I saw what can one student do during the lecture, e-lecture. take a shower, make
I
a
always-
dinner,
yeah, I
make
always-
a dinner, eat
Yeah,
a
yeah.
dinner, and so on, and so on, and so on.
Yeah, just being present on the platform that you're
Yes, of
present.
course.
But then absent, mind and
Icon
heart
is
and
on
soul
that.
and everything. Just doing something else.
The good thing is that the students are realizing this themselves. I think if you ask you, what do you prefer? Who prefers on-campus teaching?
Yeah, everyone.
The majority.
The majority.
The majority.
Yeah.
Definitely. They need to see their instructors. Like we need to see our students. I need to see their reactions. I need to see, because from
Feedback. I need a feedback. I
Yes.
need a contact.
you see it from their faces.
I must stay question, take an answer, and so on.
Yes, but still.
And if I have only icons, they are sleeping or taking shower or
Yes.
doing another things.
As we said, it's to be used effectively to enhance the skills of students and the skills of the teachers, and to save money in some cases, because, for example, in our Faculty of Engineering, all the things that they did through simulation, they were able to adapt things and to do things like they were in the lab. So it will save money in some cases as well. So it helps the sustainable development, even on the institutional level.
Okay.
Professor Roushdy has a comment.
For education.
Yeah.
Yes?
It's easy to use a robot instead of a teacher for education. Yeah.
You're right. Also, they are taking shower and my robot give a lecture. It's a very wonderful future. Thank you. Okay, I don't have.
I want to give you another example, maybe a little bit away of education. When we talk about the new normal, there are several multinational companies in our country, Egypt, that they started suddenly realizing, oh my God, the people can work from home, do all the administrative work at home. So why would I be able to rent a whole building, 3-4 stories building, and pay this humongous rent per month? I can use this money to motivate my employees, a little bit of bonuses and something, and I can cut shifts so that if I can work with 50 employees on site, and then the next week the other 50 come, and the third week, so I need only 1 floor of administrative place rented, and the others can work from home. And they started to give what we can call a motivation for this behavior to happen. Because usually that was like an attitude that could predict behavior. And this is what actually, Professor Hadia, I think you were going to speak about the fog behavior model, is that you have always, the behavior is a product of 3 factors: motivation, ability, and the trigger. And this triggered actually the idea of facing a new normal of technology, ICT usages, and no need for physical attendance. But in education, this is not the case. Like you said, face-to-face communication is much highlighted. Okay?
Okay. Yeah.
The last things. Also, it's very important. Studying is a very beautiful time. And it's not only education, it's networking.
Of course.
It's the student experience.
And so on and so on. And e-learning is not so very good for another.
The part of
study.
student experience, of course, will be lacking with the ICT. But it can only be, as we just agreed, a supplement done or used in an effective way to reach more sustainability. And I think this is the equation, the balance that we all need to achieve in future to make things more sustainable.
Yeah. Do we have the questions from audience or comments on these issues on e-learning?
I want to hear from students, actually.
Yes.
Very happy to have this bunch of bright eyes, you know.
Yes.
You're the gurus, leaders of tomorrow.
Yes, please hand up. We have a mic, so if you would have any questions. Yes, please. You
Or
have?
comments.
Yeah. And please give the mic
Yeah.
for a moment. Yeah. Yes, please. Students' opinion is very important for us because it is opportunity to learn.
So I have a question about funding. I mean, when the pandemic began and a lot of people didn't have access to either computers or tablets or telephones. So a lot of people couldn't attend classes online. So the funding for them to attend classes was like a government thing, or like there is the African Union, if I'm not mistaken. It was also similar to the European Union. So the funding was based on government, on that body, or how did they found it?
Yes, please answer.
I mean,
It is
to a
very
high
difficult.
extent, for the Egyptian government, the remote areas, the government provided. And the Ministry of Education specifically, and the primary and the secondary schools, they provided group allocations of tablets, computers, and extra funded data for the ability to reach. There was a certain kind of plan or a policy for outreach for the remote areas specifically.
So the government provided it without
Yes.
any outside funding?
No, the government provided it, and it sought, of course, the support of international organizations.
Yes.
Because through grants that the government received from various entities, they were able to secure these tablets that were distributed in all the governorates.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments on this virtual education?
So can I hear from you? What's your name? Mirna. Were
Yeah.
you here during the pandemic or back in Cairo?
The mic.
Hello, okay. I was here, but I wasn't here for the studies. I'm
Yeah.
starting this year. It's my first semester at IB. But I was here for a volunteering project. So I was at Krakow.
Krakow.
So it's
Beautiful
not my
city.
first time at Poland,
Yeah.
but it was like this in my life.
And how did you find life during pandemic? How did you continue with your project?
It was good because we start having everything online. We start like activate our knowledge, our online knowledge, with different type of programs and applications to help us to finish what we have to finish, because we were having a program and we have to finish it at this time. And also we were having interaction with our students, because we were helping English students and at Polish schools. So it helps us a lot to know more about internet and the applications that we can use it to communicate with other people.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? I would have a question concerning the gamification. In general, I would say that educational process is like a game. Yeah. On the one side, we have students. On the other side, we have teachers. So everybody from both sides want to win. Yeah. So it's at the first classes, for example, we must explain the rules of this game, the procedure, how to evaluate, what will be provided in the course. Educational process is a game, but which particular games you applied in your education? It is a strategy game, or which game do you apply in education?
Various games, actually. So, for example, in accounting, it was a game in the module as to the stages of accounting techniques. So when they reached a certain level, they would have a star, and then 2 stars, and then 3 stars. So this is, for example, one thing. We also applied the gamification in the sustainability awareness in general, because we are prime members, and part of our duty is to enhance the awareness of sustainability and the understanding of sustainability. So actually our students developed games for making the community aware of sustainability. So the students did it for themselves, and also we, in our lectures of sustainable development, we used games like the regular games. If you are in this situation, what would be the appropriate, sustainable, correct thing to do? And I give them 4 options. And if they choose the right option, then they win. If they didn't, then I win. and so on. So it is about information, and actually through this, they learn things and they don't forget it. It's not like giving a lecture. You know, when they are part of the game, and sometimes we can play I can play the game with the whole class. When I did it online and I was at home and they were at home, so I would ask questions and give 5 different scenarios, and then I would say 30% have chosen this and 50 have chosen this, and so on. And actually the right one is A, which is only 30% of you knew, for example. So in various modules and various techniques and various not just curricular activities, but also extracurricular activities. So we used it as much as we can.
We also used games in the form of competitions. And I remember I'm directing the Research Center for Innovation, Governance and Green Economy. We took it as an initiative in one of the modules to run a competition among students for the best logo for those green dustbins that are going to be displayed across our department, in order for them to understand that it's really important to separate the waste, the plastics, the papers, and the residuals and everything. And we tried to induce that, and now in every single floor of our faculty, you would find those green dustbins. We never changed the logos that were initiated by the students in between 2019 and 2020. And we did run this actually, let me just have this for a minute. We did run this actual thing. So let me tell you here something related also to what we have done related to an initiative by the faculty called the Green Day, organized by the Prime Committee under the direction of Professor Hadia. This is an awareness campaign. So what is a Green Day at our universities? We brought all the people working with startups in the green area, the green economy, the green technology, the green finance, and they displayed their projects. We enhanced our students to work for specific posters declaring what they think about sustainability and sustainable development goals. And we had a great support from the management of our university in order to include these people into our later on internships program as well. So this is a managerial perspective. Okay, it could be run on the level of a country, it could be run on the level of an institution, but these are just examples of how you include competitions into the daily running life inside the schools. Okay?
Małgorzata, do you have other questions?
Yeah, you can continue. I think you have this presentation, so you can continue to end. But later we ask questions.
Actually, to be able to do the sustainable development in higher education in the most effective way, again, we need to have everybody as stakeholders, like I mentioned, the stakeholder theory. So, in order to do that, management and the leadership plays a big role as well. And always, as Zeinab has just explained, when we did anything, if the management supports this, it will have a good push. And this is how sustainable development and sustainability in higher education can also gain grounds, because leadership is very important to support the teaching for sustainable development. And then adapting and trying to use all tools to have the students participate, be stakeholders in this endeavor. It's very important that everything, curricular activities, whether it's the modules, the courses, they have to have sustainability embedded in it as much as possible, and extracurricular activities to enhance and support this. In addition, research, staff and academic members of the higher education institution, they need to try, partially at least, to conduct research in areas of sustainability so that they develop, and even things that are applicable to their university. because this will make a big difference. And of course, the community, because in order to have sustainable development succeed, it has to go outside the educational borders as well. And this is also one thing where we have been successful in at our faculty. We have initiated a club for students. It's called Youth for Sustainable Development. And this club has as a strategy, as a vision, to include in sustainable development everybody in the community. And the first part of their objectives and actually their implementation plan was to go to the schools around the university. They went to the schools around the universities and actually they implemented some of the things that I just mentioned. They did games with the school children to make them aware of sustainable development. They made them, and I think we have pictures here.
Yes, this is one.
They were in one is a governmental school and the other is a private school, to explain the concept, to make them understand it more. Because actually small children, when they are aware of it, when they are young, they will go to their homes and will apply this at home. And then when they grow up, they will have this embedded in them. So it's not just through formal education, but the children, and I think I like this very much about what this club is doing. The second thing, and this is something I am encouraging, and this was my idea, they are going now to elderly homes as well. Because the elderly, they are part of the community, and they feel they are left out. And inclusion with everybody is part of the sustainable development. So they are going now to the elderly homes also around the university in the district where we are, and they are giving only very basic stuff like we don't want to use plastics anymore, like very, very basic stuff like we don't use excessive water. Even to the elderly, because we have some habits with the elderly that they are doing, they're like using too much water, like using too much light. They are accustomed to this. They don't realize that we are losing all of these things on Earth. So they are doing this with the elderly now. And eventually also they will go to private schools. We first started with the governmental schools, then the elderly homes, and then the private schools. So, and they use the gamification techniques, which is something very nice as well.
This is, these two pictures on the wall also are reflections of our Green Day conducted in universities, and you could find those green dustbins, like I told you, with the logos for the best possible logo for sustainability. Also, we brought some people who works on recycling products, and they sold some of their recycling products on campus, and they tried to introduce to the student the idea of recycling as well into small workshops, and the students were trying by hand, doing stuff. So this was also very, very encouraging as well.
I think we already talked about the changes in the system. These are examples. Then we mentioned here some examples from the British University, and I'm mentioning them because actually we have published this in a research paper in an academic conference on how different faculties of the university manage the education process during the pandemic. So, and this is one of the things that I just mentioned in the three facets, which is research. There has to be always research to support these attempts towards sustainability.
By the way, what is the attitude of students toward your all initiatives? Do they support it, or they treat it as?
No. It's so much supported, because sometimes also the trick is it is implemented in their grades, and it is implemented in how they can manage their modules. Because look here, I want to show you something here. Yeah. So here, workshop on effective leadership for a win-win situation. This was in collaboration between our International Aspect Committee under my direction and Professor Mishra from India on a platform, on an online platform. He explained What do you need as a weapon for CV writing in the future, and how you can manage on the actual skills that you have linking an industrial background to academics. And basically speaking, he was from Dave Business School. And basically speaking, the collaboration ended is that students were given like competitions about answering the questions within the online, and their attendance counted, their participation counted, and so on and so forth. The other idea was a completely different endeavors by the Research Center for Innovation. And we tried to introduce students to what is it related to innovation in managerial maritime policies. And maritime transport has been affected on a sustainable level, highly affected. And we tried to include students to understand what is maritime competitive advantage, what is maritime business in general. And therefore, we engage students. So usually we say that attitude would predict behavior and personality would predict behavior. But at the end of the day, motivation will lead to the predicted behavior that we want. So we motivate students to interact and to be included within the curriculum. Maybe by grading, by adding some bonuses, by telling them if you attend, you're going to gain some extra points in your class. These things don't harm, but they matter at the end.
Yeah, that's true. The additional points is the strong motivation, yeah,
Yes,
because
of course.
usually also in Poland this is the same issue. But I would say, ask, what is in general the attitude students towards studies? Do they want to continue on master studies, or they just graduate, I mean, bachelor level, and they are not interested in that? Could you somehow add some comments?
In general, no. In general, they want to just finish and go to the labor market. But those who want to pursue academic career, they want to do their master's and their PhD. And they are usually TAs, teaching assistants first, and then during the teaching assistant time, they do their master's degree, and then eventually also when they continue, they do their PhD. But not many would like to do a master's if they are not pursuing academic career. Because actually academic career in Egypt, and I think this must be around the world, is not so profitable. And you know, the young people now, they really are after, they want to graduate and be managers, you know.
They don't want to start the ladder from down, just up.
I think it's a little bit different in Poland, because bachelor is too less to be a manager.
I think in Western countries, yes, many do their MBAs at least, because this is needed now, because everybody has a bachelor.
MBA, okay. So
And masters
higher
also.
level.
But in Egypt, no, it's not. Still is not. They want to go out. They want to finish their studies and immediately they want to work.
In Poland, I think master. It's enough, and then another one.
Yeah, the bachelor is enough for some degrees. Yeah,
For the
specifically if
majority
you're
in
going to,
Egypt, it is enough.
yeah,
For the
private
majority,
universities, public universities.
yes.
So it's a little bit different.
Even in our university, and I have yearly in my faculty, we have something like 300 graduates. Maybe maximum 20 of them will pursue their masters, not more than this.
So how many
20
percent?
out of 300. This would be something like less than 10%.
Less than 10% continue studies, yes?
Yes.
No, it's not so many.
Not
Yeah.
so many, no.
But in general, the people, I mean the young people, are interested in studies, or do they prefer to just work without studies? Just without, how do you evaluate this young people attitude toward university education? Do they highly appreciate it, or just treat it as no.
No, university education, no, it's highly appreciated to the extent,
Yeah,
that sometimes technical education is put aside. I can reflect on the Canadian experience in technical education. It doesn't matter to be a university graduate. You can do what you want to do by highlighting some years of practical experience. You maybe take a gap year, or you do the co-op with your education. This is highly encouraged in the Canadian system, but sometimes in Egyptian educational system, you have to graduate. This certificate is like a weapon. You find people under an educational level, maybe illiterate person, he wants his son or his daughter to be a university graduate. They wouldn't encourage the son to take the technical education because he wants him in a position secured afterwards. And university graduates go on the myth that job securities are ensured for university graduates. On the other hand, you can find so many businesses lacking the technicalities, or what we can say the middle education, not the higher education.
But this is cultural.
Yes.
It is cultural that it is very important to have a university degree, but investigating really or examining that the students themselves, they value it, really they want to go and study, no. Not all of them. It is a requirement of the society.
And the completion.
If somebody does not have a university degree, it is a problem. Yes, it is very important.
Yes, it is, the situation in Poland is changing here also. We also have less and less students of master studies. I would say that technical universities have maybe different attitudes, but in business, the people sometimes they feel free, they know how to manage the business, particularly if it is family business. They know how to do it. So they think they do not learn how to do business, yeah? Maybe in this domain like data science, where you have a lot of statistical methods, then the students would expect that they will learn this method at the university.
Yes.
Yeah? So that is because the data science, just now it is the profession, data scientist, it is very, fashionable. And a lot of students and a lot of employees are interested in employment of such graduate student, data scientists. Yeah.
So this is the same in Egypt. And for example, our faculty in the university, which is the faculty of ICS, Information Technology and so on, they always had a problem of completing the target. So they have a target of accepting 200 students. They didn't achieve that. This year is the first time where they not only achieved, they exceeded, because they introduced a new major, which is artificial intelligence.
Yeah,
so everybody wants to go to artificial intelligence because this is what the market is seeking. So yes, this is happening in Egypt as well.
Yeah, but I have a question. What do you mean by artificial intelligence? Robotics or data science? Could you answer?
Professor Roushdy.
Yeah, I think data science and robotics. Yeah.
Both of them.
Yeah, both. Yeah.
Yes, it's the same. Actually, just to give you an example, I have many students in my area. We are in the business faculty, of course. I have some students who actually run already their family businesses, and they just come to have the certificate because they won the paper. But they are already working and very successful entrepreneurs and working with their fathers in their businesses. So they just want the certificate.
The certificate is to sustain the future.
Yes, he wants to have the paper, yes.
Yeah, it's actually the certificate is to sustain the future, whether it is needed or not needed. Because if you meet one of the guys for family business and he's paid very well and he has already an establishment already going on, but he still needs this. This is a culture. And Professor Hadia has a great course on cross-cultural communication and cross-cultural pretenses as well. So I think we have 5 minutes, if you can give us an opportunity to speak a little bit about the opportunities and threats for Egypt in general towards sustainability. I would say that it's population growth and urbanization, and that's why things like what was introduced by Professor Roushdy are very, very important. Excessive waste generation, the pollution of soil and air and water. But Egypt still is committed to progress towards achieving the Sustainable Development Goal. In the Vision Strategy of 2030, there is an alignment with the government, with the policymakers for these pillars covering the Sustainable Development Goals. The implementation and governance, and sometimes the instability of the different stratas in the societies, the different leveled income of the society is another challenge. Also, one of the biggest challenges that are faced by the companies committed to sustainability are operations that are impacted the most due to reduction in procurement. And this is a very reflective concept when it comes to community needs to face the environmental aspects of change as well. You could find the key sustainability challenges would be the zero waste, the regenerative nature, the adaptation and resilience, the zero emission. And you could also find that the measurements for overcoming the challenges of sustainable development will be the use of technology in all aspects, not only in education, improving the quality of life, promoting environmental awareness, and enhancing resource utilization. And I would tell you that Egypt initiative to run for the COP27, why should we do it in Sharm el-Sheikh? Sharm el-Sheikh is the city of peace. Sharm el-Sheikh is the ecotourism city in a governorate in Egypt. When we talk about the protected diversity habits, Sharm was named by UNESCO before as the city of peace and charm. The alignment of the Egyptian government for climate change, more carbon reduction emission is highly advocated because what will it be for Egypt by 2024 if this succeeds? The hopes to receive 50% of green investment funding in the budget. Egypt was the first to initiate the green bonds. And we want to invest highly in these green bonds. You will see that receiving funds will help in securing clean energy necessary to achieve the SDGs. And the COP27 will be the transition from all the discussions during the last years up to a certain kind of platform for action. So the three pillars of sustainability usually are the economic, environmental, protection, and social equity. And I think that Professor Hadia can conclude our presentation talking about a quick
just to sum up, and I have highlighted this, I think, a lot when I was talking already. And again, it has to start with the policy makers in order to have a better future for Egypt with ICT and education, that we need to enhance and work on the results of the pandemic and work towards better infrastructure and enhanced infrastructure to support digitization, to have developed the digital platforms in a more effective way so that they reach all classes, all levels of society, and try to develop the Ministry of Education and Ministry of Higher Education platforms, as well as the Ministry of Scientific Research, in order to have accessible and advanced ways and technologies to support the education, develop curricula that is more flexible and supports hybrid teaching, develop the skills of the instructors and of the students in order to have more excellent results. And again, we need to target the poorest areas and provide them with the maximum support possible so that it is really sustainable development and zero poverty, zero hunger, and more education and more awareness to everyone in the society. Thank you.
Yeah, we are on time here. Usually during my courses, I am distributing the attending list at the beginning, but usually here I see the attending list should be distributed at the end. So yeah, the students who are already, who are still with us, so I would like to say thank you to you, now more than two. So we highly appreciate your efforts, particularly that you are so patient and stayed with us. So thank you, professors, for your discussions, questions, presentations, and so on. So I think that this was great idea for us to learn about Egypt. Great experience, great ideas, great technology. So just now the session is over, so we ask you for lunch. Yeah, thank you.